Okay. Okay, are we ready to start? Please, everybody come, take your seats. I'm Boaz Arad, and I'm the manager of the Ayn Rand Center in Israel, and I'm honored to open the Free Market Roadshow 2022 in Tel Aviv, which is the second station of a new tour, worldwide tour. And we are honored to have the team of Free Market Roadshow in Israel. And today we are coupling this event with the celebration of a new publication of With the Living. Thank you to anybody who put it here. I forgot. Thank you. For you, Sharren, yeah. Okay, so I'm proud to open this special event, which express cooperation between forces of liberty and enlightenment. We are celebrating both the production of the new book, new translation, by famous translator Sharren Ferminger. I know that she is following us, and Sharren, thank you. And this was Ayn Rand's first novel that was published in 1936, and we are collaborating with the Free Market Roadshow 2022, which is a project of the Austrian Economic Center and many affiliate organizations. And we have with us today leading speakers for the cause of freedom and individual liberty. Among them, member of the Knesset, Sharren Haskel, that honors us with her presence, and Yaron Brook, the chairman of the board of the Ayn Rand Institute, Gia Jandieri, hi Gia, founder of the New Economic School in Georgia, Barbara Column, VP at the Austrian Central Bank and manager at the Austrian Economic Center, will join us through the internet, through a video link, and Hans Unterdorfer, who is a CEO of Tiroler Sparkasse, which is a bank in Austria. The organization we are collaborating with for this event is the Free Market Roadshow, that managed by the Austrian Economic Center, the Israeli Freedom Movement, that promoting individual freedom and free market in Israel, the Ayn Rand Institute in USA, that promoting and advancing the philosophy of Ayn Rand, and the Ayn Rand Center in Israel. And we have a packed program today in which we will address most crucial aspect of freedom, and it is my pleasure and honor to invite member of the Knesset, Sharren Haskel, to the stage. Few words about Sharren. Sharren is the member of New Hope, Tikva Hadasha party in the 24th Knesset. She serves as the chair of the Knesset Education, Culture and Sport Committee, and chair of the special committee on the bill of regulate the use of cannabis for medical purpose. Difficult name, which means it's a complicated issue. Sharren has been member of the Knesset since 2015, when she became the youngest Likud member of the Israeli parliament. She is the unchallenged winner of the Israeli Freedom Movement Liberty Index. And we honor her for her, and thank you, Sharren, for coming. Please come in.
Thank you very much, and thank you to everybody who came here today. I'm very proud of that title of leading the scale of freedom amongst the Knesset member. And I guess now that we finished another seat, you're probably going to publish another one. That's going to be interesting because it's been a very, very challenging seat in the Knesset. We have, whoever's watching us maybe internationally, we have a very complicated government in that sense as well, where we're actually working together with a number of socialist, I would say even more towards communist party, and there's a lot of arguments and fights to do about the economy, so it is extremely challenging. So I'll be very interested in seeing the results of the last seats in the Knesset in that scale as well. But maybe it will be the first time since I entered the Knesset that They will be someone who is actually advancing and voting and promoting legislation, liberal legislation. And you know what? I hope so. I hope there's more Knesset members who are capable of fighting and pushing through bills who expand our individual liberties and our economic freedom. So I wrote on my first maybe point is basically some of the challenging issues that we're facing in recent day. Specifically, we had a horrific attack yesterday in the south of Israel, where 4 Israeli citizens were murdered by a terrorist who was actually previously until 2015 a teacher in Israel in the south. And those horrific attacks and the challenging that we have in recent years about the safety and security of the citizens of Israel raise a lot of questions and a lot of challenges that we're facing here in the state of Israel. And obviously, there's sort of an agreement between the citizens and the government that the government is meant to keep our life and the safety of its citizens. And in exchange for that, we actually limit our freedoms and liberties here in the country. And in a country like Israel, this is actually being faced and challenged time after time. Personally, I feel like during my military service, I served as a combat soldier, and I feel like I received there the proper training to be able to guard my safety and my family's safety. I have a private license for a gun as well, that I know I'm capable of keeping myself safe and my family safe. But as a country, we have to address this issue, and we are trying now in the recent months to bring more legislation in order to make sure that we bring back, we'll call it law and order as much as possible in communities, mainly Arab communities around our country, not to even start explaining and talking about terrorist attack that we're facing throughout the years. Israel is not an easy place. And we were celebrating today the new publishing of the book We the Living of Ayn Rand. And the book mainly speaks about the life and the safety and liberties and the ownership, property, and all the individual liberty. And for me, I feel like that is my main mission and my main goal in the Knesset as a representative. It's been for the past 7 years since I'm in the Knesset, I've been trying to fight in order to make sure that we expand those liberties. And in a country like Israel, where I think I can say that when we start sort of the foundation of Israel, it was very difficult, a lot of communist party. And you know what? Maybe it was needed in the beginning of building a country, building an economy, building everything, from basically nothing. And maybe it was needed. We have a beautiful country, but what we see today is dragging that and not eliminating all of those restrictions and extreme bureaucracy and putting that power of everything in the hands of clerks, of people who work in ministries. This is the main barrier for our generation today, not the founding generation, but for our generation who is such a creative and thriving a generation who wants to own business and develop the country and develop the economy and push Israel through the boundaries, international boundaries, as further as possible. Those things that maybe assisted to the founding generation are our main barriers today. And so my mission is really to try and eliminate as much as possible from that regulations, from these bureaucracy. It's not easy. It wasn't easy with the last government. We had now 4 Knessets with this government, the coalition as well. But slowly we are making progress. I think some of the reforms that the Ministry of Treasury is now pushing are things that should have been done years and years ago. And we are pushing through all of our forces in order to try and actually push them through. It's not easy because there's a lot of challenges with other parties who are collaborating with us in this coalition. So the economical sort of issues are more challenging, but there's still quite a lot of progress. At the same time, there's still a lot of progress that we have to do. Maybe I can sort of enlighten a little bit of today. There was the minister cabinet of Chevrati Kalkali, the yeah, and I know we have some people here from the banks around the world. So the Bank of Israel actually showed to the ministers research that prove that Israel is as competitive in the economical market as other countries around the world. A lot of this information that was given by the Bank of Israel is actually twisted information. Israel is far behind in whatever is with competitiveness in the market, in the economical market. There is so much regulation. There is so much concentration of power in very few companies. And it was very disturbing. And for me, I know I'm trying to sort of change that the Bank of Israel is actually showing sort of twisted information. They pick and choose a few things. I won't go into too much details, but I think they are actually the one who are meant to push the ministers of Israel to create reforms that will create more competition in Israel, because that will make a better economy, that will give more opportunities for the younger generation. So on that side, there's still a lot to do, On individual liberties, as Boaz said, there's obviously my, I'll call it flagship of individual liberties, where we see it as one of the, like the cannabis regulations here in Israel. I've been working quite a few years on a reform to legalize cannabis here in Israel, on a reform of the medical cannabis here in Israel. And many people ask me, what is this thing? Like, why do you deal all the time with cannabis? And I keep on telling them that for our generation, this is a flag of individual liberties. What I do in my home with my body, I'm not harming my environment. I'm not harming other people. I didn't steal. I didn't murder. Why is there a reason to label me as a criminal? What kind of power is being given to the state to try and dictate what I can do with my body and with my future? And I think sort of in recent years it's sort of trickled down and people more and more understand that. But I do think this is sort of a flag for me for those individual liberties. There's quite a lot of reforms that we are promoting as well, including a foundation law, Chok Yesod. How do you?
Base law, which is a more important.
It's a base law. It's similar to like a constitutional law here in. It's something similar to that. That sort of keep the rights of people who are suspected or being interrogated by the police or being charged with a criminal offense around court, because there's a lot of problems and issues today with the law system and with the court system, the judicial system as well, that we have to fix. So this will actually start and sort of build and give the proper rights for citizens who are facing the system and the system is abusing their power in a lot of the cases. So I'll conclude in saying, first of all, Boaz, thank you so much for all the work that you do for the liberal community here in Israel. I think that in the recent years, the liberal movement here in Israel have made revolutionary steps in anything to do with the perspective of how citizens view legislation, how they address the economy. There's a different conversation, even in the media, throughout communities, and we can really sense it. There is a change. There's still a long way to go, but the work that you do among communities and in the media is extremely valuable. So I would like to thank you, and thank you so much for inviting me all the time for your conferences and for your event, and I'm really, really proud to take part in all of your activities. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Sharren. And our next speaker is Dr. Yaron Brook. He is the chairman of the board of the Ayn Rand Institute. He wears many hats as the institute and travels extensively as the Ayn Rand Institute spokesman and on behalf of the cause of freedom. Brook represents very rare voice of objective thinking, and is consist, clear, and important in his position. You don't hear it so often. This is why I urge you all to follow his podcast, Yaron Brook Show. He wrote and co-authored many works and papers, and some of his books are positions there on the counter. So in the intermission, you may pick a copy and ask Yaron to sign, and you sign it, and you have an opportunity to do it. So Yaron will talk about the new publication of We the Living. So please, Yaron, take the stand.
Can I do this? I don't like podiums. Thanks, everybody. Thanks for inviting me, Boaz, and thank you for the Free Market Roadshow for inviting me, and thank you all for being here. I just want to start by seconding what the member of the Knesset just said about Boaz. I mean, I don't know how many of you appreciate how different Israel is today than it was in terms of these ideas than it was 30 and 40 years ago when I was sitting in your chair watching somebody talk about Ayn Rand and talking about the stuff here in Tel Aviv, actually just around the corner near the Cinematheque. That was a long time ago. And the difference in the visibility that Ayn Rand has, that liberal ideas generally, free market ideas have in Israel today, visibility in politics, but also the visibility just broadly in culture, is night and day as compared to what it was back then. And much of that, if not all of it, is due to the work Boaz has done over the last 40 years. So thank you, Boaz. Good job. So I've been asked to talk about Ayn Rand's novel, We the Living. We're publishing it, as you can see, in Hebrew, Anu Chaim. It's exciting to see as Ayn Rand's books come out in print in Hebrew. It's always exciting to see, and I think this is just one more step in getting Ayn Rand's ideas out there into the Israeli public, and primarily among young people, and getting people excited about her ideas and about her as a novelist as well. We the Living has, I think, a very unique place among Ayn Rand's novels. Because of all of them, it is the most autobiographical. It is the closest Ayn Rand ever came to writing about her own life. She lived We the Living. Right? Now, I don't want to give any plot spoilers, but We the Living is about a young woman who grows up under the Soviet boot, under Soviet culture, under Soviet rules, under Soviet ideas, during that period, and what happens to her. And I won't get into the one difference between real life and the difference in the novel, because I don't want to give the ending of the novel away. I want you to feel, when you read it, the full emotional impact that it has, because it is an incredibly powerful ending. But much of what happens in We the Living is very similar to what happened in Rand's life. Importantly, I think what We the Living does is it really provides us with a picture, a story of what it was like to live under the Soviet Union, but more broadly, what it's like to live under authoritarianism. What it's like to live in a world where your choices don't matter, where your values don't matter, where your opinions don't matter, where at the end of the day, your life doesn't matter to anybody. We the Living depicts that world and what happens to good people in that world. People who are trying to live, trying to survive, trying to succeed at the task, not an easy one, of living, living with a capital L, really living, not just surviving. And of course, authoritarianism, as the book illustrates, I think brilliantly, authoritarianism kills one's ability to live. And if you think about that in a sense as the theme of the novel, everything in the novel is centered around that. Authoritarianism kills life. Because life requires making choices for yourself. Life requires the freedom to use your mind, to use reason, to choose your values, and to choose and to initiate the actions necessary to achieve those values. And to use your mind and to pursue your values requires that you be free from coercion, that you be free from force, that you be free from authority. And I think of all Ayn Rand's books, We the Living illustrates that the best, because it illustrates what happens not only materially to the heroes, to the people who are trying to live, but what it does to their spirit, what it does to them psychologically, how it eviscerates their soul, and how difficult it is to hold on, to survive, to keep the spirit of living alive in you. The heroine in the story, of course, does, but she's alone. All the other characters, in one way or another, are destroyed by the authoritarianism. Not just physically, because one of them at least survives physically, but spiritually, they are nothing. They are a living death, right? They are dead, they're zombies. They might look alive, but inside they're completely dead. And that's what authoritarianism does. That's what having somebody else make choices for you, having somebody else choose your values for you, having somebody else dictate to you how you can and cannot live, what you can and cannot do, and what you can and cannot think. That's what it does to your soul. So, I think it's really important. And I think this is a book that is incredibly timely right now. It's really important to figure out what causes authoritarianism, what brings it about, what can we do to avoid it at pretty much all costs, because the consequences are so horrific to our individual lives that fighting for it is not an option. It's a necessity. fighting against authoritarianism. It's not an option. It is a necessity. So what are the causes of authoritarianism? How do we get to a position where in the Soviet Union, a small group of people got to make decisions for everybody? Got to make decisions for everybody in every aspect that was important to life. How do we get to such a condition? Well, the only way for authoritarianism to rise up, and if you look at communism, and if you look at Nazism, and if you look at fascism, and if you look at, I don't know what they call it today, Putinism, or whatever you want to call it, although he's not yet quite as totalitarian as some of these others, but he certainly seems to be striving in that direction. You see a common thread. And the common thread is an ideology, a philosophy that unfortunately was at the founding of the State of Israel. So it's something we have to watch for and be very, very careful of. And certainly is all over Israel today. And that is the philosophy of collectivism. That is the idea that what matters morally is the group, is the collective, is some kind of well-being of the proletarian, the Aryan race, the society, the state, whatever group you want to fill in. And the individual is nothing but a tool to achieve the well-being of the group. That the individual is nothing. He's meaningless outside of the group. And indeed, his life should be and can be sacrificed for the group. Now, this is an idea that permeates the world. It's around us everywhere. And it really is an idea that dominates human history for the last, since civilization started, 5,000 years. There have been very few periods in history where that idea was not the dominant idea. Individuals didn't matter. They didn't matter in ancient times. Who did your life belong to? Some group, some tribe, some collective, some country, some God. It certainly didn't belong to you. You didn't matter. You were just there to be sacrificed for this greater good, the public interest, the common welfare. Tribalism has dominated the human experience for the last 5,000 years, and before that, but before that doesn't really matter. It's very rare that we recognize the value of an individual mind, the value of an individual life, as the essence of morality and the essence of our politics. Maybe some individuals in Greece, maybe some individuals in Rome, but beyond that, Western history, the individual matters little. Until the Renaissance and then the Enlightenment in Western history. Until the idea of human reason, the efficacy of human reason, our ability to know the world, discover the world, understand the world as individuals using our reason, in a sense was rediscovered from the writings of the Greeks, rediscovered by the thinkers of the Enlightenment. And suddenly you get a shift, a change, a dramatic change in everything, in every aspect of life. Every aspect of life on planet Earth, at least in the West, changed in the 18th century. We got political freedom. We got individual liberties. Hey, you got to choose who to marry. Before that, nobody chose who they married. It was all arranged marriages. You got to choose what profession you got to do, right? What did you do before that? What profession did you have in the 15th, 16th, 17th centuries? Whatever your father did. And if you were a woman, you had no profession. Nobody. There were no women who had professions. And suddenly, because we started looking at people as individuals with minds who could think for themselves and take care of themselves, the world opened up. If I can think for myself, I want to choose my profession. If I can think for myself, I want to choose my wife. If I can think for myself, I want to choose my political leaders. If I can think for myself, leave me alone. Protect me. Help me protect my rights. But otherwise, leave me alone. And that's America. And that's the West since that period. But the struggle between that, which I believe is the core of Western civilization, it's the core of what it means to be civilized, that has had to struggle against the forces of collectivism. The forces of collectivism have constantly pushed back against it from the beginning. Kant and Hegel and Schopenhauer and Marx and all of them were forces of collectivism, fighting against the Enlightenment, fighting against individual liberty, fighting against the sanctity of the individual. And they manifested themselves in communism, in socialism, in Nazism, in fascism, in all of these ideas. All these ideas that place the group. And why does collectivism have to be authoritarian? In one way or another, it has to be. Why? Because the fact is, there's no such thing as the common good. What's good for the Aryan people? I don't know. And the fact is, no particular Aryan knows. So what do they need? Somebody to commune with the spirit of Aryans. Somebody to commune with the spirit of proletarians. Something to commune with the spirit of the nation. The spirit of the Jews. Whatever. But somebody has to commune with the spirits to be able to guide you, to be able to tell you what is right and what is just. You as an individual are a meaningless cog in this collective. So somebody has to guide. They're always reluctant. But what can you do? Somebody has to lead. So collectivism necessitates authoritarianism of one sort or another. Some of it might be milder, where it's just experts. And sometimes it's full-blown authoritarian, where every aspect of your life is determined by a leader, by political elites. We need to fight this. We need to stop it from happening. And I think We the Living is a great illustration of how bad it can get. And of course, another manifestation of how bad it can get, you can see right now in the war between Russia and Ukraine, that we'll be talking about later. But here's an authoritarian with a dream. A dream. I mean, I take Putin at his word. He has a dream for a greater Russia, a Russian empire. I mean, he said so. He says so in his speeches. And he's representing the Russian people. This is good for the Russian people. Not for any individual Russian. What do they care? And they're asked to die for his dream. But he's communing with the spirit of Russia. He talks about the Ukrainians and the Russians having the same soul and the same spirit. It doesn't look that way right now. Ukrainians seems to disagree. He has a dream for greater Russia. And he's willing to sacrifice as many people as it takes on both sides. His people don't matter to him. What matters is the dream. What matters is the dream. He said, not that many years ago, he said that the biggest tragedy of the 20th century was not, I don't know, World War I, where tens of millions of people died, or World War II, or the Holocaust. No. The biggest tragedy of the 20th century was the breakup of the Soviet Union. And now he's just remedying that. But why is the Soviet Union of value? To whom? To Mother Russia. To some collective, some spiritual value, some spirit that exists in some mystical realm that he is the only one who can commune with and let us know what is needed, and we must take it back. We're seeing this collectivism. We're seeing this collectivism all over. We're seeing it in the West. We're seeing it in America, and the tribalism that we've experienced over the last decade or so in American politics, in American culture. You're seeing it here in Israel. It is something we need to fight. And the only way to fight it, the only way to fight bad ideas, is with good ideas. And the idea that you need to fight against collectivism is the idea of individualism. And the greatest champion of individualism, I believe, ever was Ayn Rand. And so I encourage you all to read her books, study her ideas, promote them, get them out there, let them inspire you, and go out, fight the collectivists. We need to do it every day if we want to hold back this historical wave that seems to be coming towards us in the form of authoritarianism and collectivism. So it really is fantastic to see another one of Ayn Rand's books in Hebrew. You know, it will sell well in this country of books among the people of the book. And I look forward every year to coming back to Israel and seeing more growth, more books, more readers is even more important. Thank you, everybody.